I love the Game of Thrones intro. I'm telling you, we just need now like this little camera that's panning around the NFL field. It goes to one stadium, it goes to the other. You have cleats, you have Gatorade dripping down from the sides. I'm telling you, I'm actually a director in disguise. Like I'm actually really fully a director in disguise. Welcome into the Fantasy Fire and Ice NFL edition. We're giving you an early look into some DFS players, props, all these other things to look at. And I'm here joined by my man Steezy at Steezy A. Smith. He's giving you everything great from the Seattle area. And we're going to have to talk to him about Seattle a little bit more because I think there's some DFS potential there for week one. Steezy, what's going on, my brother?
Man, my brother, man, I'm feeling great, feeling blessed by the best. What can I say, man? How you doing?
Oh, I'm loving it. And we here talking about DFS. We got the optimizer down. Well, Ross, there we go. Hey, mirror. All right, mirror. We got the optimizer down there. Make sure you guys take that QR code, go get the Fantasy Sports Logic optimizer. That's going to help you with your DFS. That's where we're pulling a lot of this information up from. Talking about DFS, giving you the best optimal lineups, the best possible creations for you to make to take down $1 million. If you want to take down $1 million, go ahead, take your chance. If you want to just win a small mom and pop league where it's 10 of y'all putting in 25, $50, whatever, then you can take that down too. We are here to help you in your endeavors. So Steezy, I mean, I want to get to you. We're gonna talk Seahawks with you for in a second. We're gonna go come back to that situation because I got somebody from the Seahawks in my lineup already, and I need your thoughts on it. But let's start with the big news that everybody's talking about. We're not even previewing this game. That's for tomorrow. But Travis Kelsey hyperextended knee in practice yesterday. I'm currently in a dynasty startup draft. It's been a slow draft that's been going on for like a week. And the guy was on his pick, had picked Kelsey last week, was on his pick again, and was like, dang, now I need to go draft another tight end. What's your outlook hearing that ACL is still intact, but it looks like his status is uncertain for tomorrow and potentially for the next couple of weeks because this isn't an injury that's just going to go away.
Right. I mean, Terrell, like you talked about, this is a hyperextended knee. The good news, like you did mention, is that the ACL is intact. The bad news, especially for fantasy owners, is that his availability beyond week one. I mean, a lot of people are asking, is he going to play week one? Heck, when's he coming back? I know he's not playing week
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Like
You know
everybody's
what I'm
worried about week one, and I'm like, when is he gonna be back in the lineup? Do I even need to draft this guy?
That's what I'm saying. And so I like Noah Gray. Obviously, you like the tight end one or somebody that's going to be in the mix in that regard, but he doesn't have the same sort of chemistry as a Travis Kelsey does with a Patrick Mahomes. The connection just is not there. And respectfully, the talent also is not there. And so if I'm a Travis Kelsey, I guess owner, I'm definitely looking at definitely other options. Obviously, I look at other options. We could definitely touch on that a little bit more later. If Noah Gray, if you're desperate, I guess, and for Noah Gray, I mean, that should be a high scoring affair versus the Detroit Lions on Thursday Night Football tomorrow. And man, I can't wait. Like, shoot, it's just right here. I feel it. The NFL season is coming, and so
Mhm.
I guess if I had to give you a guy right now though that I really really like, what's his name? David Njoku. David Njoku for the Browns.
Eh, yeah, no, I like Njoku too, especially replacement at tight end. If you're looking for tight end replacements, maybe this is season long. Maybe you're doing a DFS lineup for tomorrow, and you're wondering, man, I was going to play Kelsey tomorrow. Who am I going to replace him with? And if I'm just talking about any player that I think is going to step up for them, I think it's 100% going to be uh, Jerick McKinnon. If we look at Travis Kelsey, the reason Travis Kelsey was so good was because he had a positional advantage over any defender they put on him. It didn't matter what defender they put on him, he had an advantage. And that's pretty much what it is for Jerick McKinnon. Does he have the talent of Kelsey? No, but he has an advantage over most linebackers or most people that kind of try to line outside of him. And we saw that in the end of the last season where he scored in like the last 6 games or 6 or 7 games or something like that. He was scoring touchdowns because he had that advantage. So I think now without Kelsey probably being in the lineup, you have a Jerick McKinnon, who is good on third down. We know he's going to be the third down back. It's going to be a good option for Patrick Mahomes. He's a veteran, and this is somewhere where Patrick Mahomes can feel safe throwing the football, especially on third down. I think Jerick McKinnon gets a lot more burn in this game tomorrow night.
Man, honestly, I'm with you there. And my bad, I probably should have went with a player for tomorrow. But like I talked about, it's gonna be a high scoring game. It should be a shootout, and there's gonna be a lot
Uh-huh.
of points on both sides. Jake McCain, like you talked about, reaped the benefits of that last year. A lot of my fantasy teams actually reaped the benefits of him having been on the field, him kind of being that security blanket for Patrick Mahomes. If you had to lean towards a receiver, though, I've seen some people talk about Kadarius Toney, but which of the Chiefs wide receivers would you go with if you had to? And let's say you couldn't pick a Jerick McKinnon, but you needed a replacement for tomorrow for Travis Kelce.
Uh I see the thing with wide receiver and tight end for tomorrow is that I feel like I'm taking a dart at the board and just hoping for a bullseye, knowing I know nothing about darts and I'm probably gonna land on a 2 or a 4. Like, I mean, how do you possibly uh even consider, like, it could be anybody. It could be if he suits up Kadarius Toney. He's been a favorite target of Patrick Mahomes when he's in the lineup. It could be Sky Moore. It could be Noah Gray, like you talked about. It could be Blake Bell. I have Blake Bell at 22-1 for first touchdown just because we've seen this Chief offense go into some weird triple option mode and then they flip it over to the backup tight end and he walks in for a touchdown. Like, there's so many different options. And so I kind of stayed away from a lot more Chiefs players and just said that, hey, if I got Patrick Mahomes, I feel good. I have Jerick McKinnon. I think Jerick McKinnon is going to account for a score and some yardage. I feel decent about that. But anybody else on the Chiefs, I kind of feel like it's just a dart throw and hoping that they get open for Patrick Mahomes on that one play.
Right. I mean, we talked about one of the running backs. Detroit's run defense last year was kind of leaky, and that's being generous to say the least. What do you think about Isaiah Pacheco? Do you think he'll rush for over 100? Do you think that they can get him involved enough to where he can have a good day, at least a solid day in fantasy terms?
Yeah, I don't have anything against Isaiah Pacheco. I think that he potentially could get more burn. It's kind of hard thinking that you're gonna, especially in what should be a shootout, that they're gonna continue to run the ball with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback. Patrick Mahomes leading his team. So I just think that by default he's gonna lose some of that burn, but he's gonna get it back in maybe a couple of targets that Jerick McKinnon doesn't get or anything like that. I think he's gonna be a valuable piece, but for this game, for me, and I know we're not doing a Thursday night preview, it's more about the Lions than it is about the Chiefs. I think there's going to be a lot of usage and people trying to play darts and figure out, oh, is it going to be a Sky Moore day? Is it going to be a Marquez Valdez Scantling day? Is it going to be Rashee Rice, the rookie wide receiver? Is it going to be Kadarius Toney if he signs up? Like, I rather let everybody play whack-a-mole trying to figure out which wide receiver or which receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs is going to be mindful. I'm going over to the Lions and I like a Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's going to have a good game because no Chris Jones in this one. So there's going to be more time in the pocket for Jared Goff with that pass rush. That pass rush is completely different without Chris Jones. So I'm expecting to see Amon-Ra St. Brown have a good game. David Montgomery could be vulturing on the goal line. Jahmyr Gibbs could be catching a lot of passes out the backfield. So it's a lot more about the Lions players for me and them stepping up to the Chiefs, even though I have the Chiefs winning the game. I think that with Patrick Mahomes, I'm pretty good and accounted for majority of those fantasy points, especially if he gets it done with his legs like I expect him to.
Whew. I mean, we'll probably touch on this a little bit later, but if you had to, would you roll with a Patrick Mahomes, Noah Gray? I mean, I never got your stance on that, so I'm
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
curious to
no.
hear.
So I took Blake Bell,
Oh,
and
you
that
took
was just
right.
because it was, yeah, I took Blake Bell when I made my lineup for tomorrow. I took Blake Bell and said Blake Bell was the option that I wanted to go with. But I like a Noah Gray option too. Like Justin Watson, like there's a Justin Watson out there. So he's somebody that was big for them last year early on in the season. He caught a couple of touchdowns. Like Justin Watson, I think the most of the betting community is actually getting down on his anytime touchdowns. So it's like it's so many options, and that's what happens when you got somebody as great as Patrick Mahomes, leader of the Patrick Mahomes fan club right here, just letting you know when you got somebody that's the GOAT as Patrick Mahomes, it don't matter who's on the other side. And this is what I'm expecting from the Kansas City Chiefs, for them to say, hey, I don't care who's on the other side of the ball. We have the greatest quarterback in the world, and he's going to get the ball to playmakers, and they're going to make it do what it do. So I'm looking forward to it. And I know you're looking forward to it. Thursday night is going to be great. let's go ahead and get into the weekend. But we got a couple of questions. I wanted to take a break and look. Definitely, if you guys are not catching us live, make sure you go catch us live at youtube.com/at Sportstopia HQ. Make sure you do that and hop into the chat, ask questions. We'll answer all type of questions. We'll interact with the chat, anything like that. Brian's asking, "How's it going?" Oh, I'm good. Appreciate you asking. How are you doing? That's a lot of people ask how's it going and then don't expect the answer. Now I gave you an answer and I'm asking for a response. How are you doing today? Because I'm good. Start Javonte Williams, Brees Hall, or Deion Jackson for week 1. I Let's see. Devontae Williams, Brees Hall, or only start one of those three. I actually really do like Deion Jackson today. I can't wait to talk about him a little bit later. But I really, really like Deion Jackson this week, and I think people are sleeping on him. Uh, I'm gonna go ahead and X out Javante because I don't know what the workload is gonna be. I have him rostered in a couple of leagues, but I have him starting off in the bench because I know it's gonna be a split between him, Samaje Perine. We'll see what that Broncos offense looks like. Brees Hall is tempting, but you still have the. I don't know, man. I think I'm going contrarian. I think nobody's gonna say it, but I think you got to roll out Deion Jackson. Like he's gonna get the starting role. He may not get a whole bunch of actual carries. He's gonna get his fair share amount, but and I'm just going to go ahead and lead this into my Deion Jackson take for why I'm starting him in flex this week in DFS. And it's the fact that when you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars defensive depth chart from 2022 to 2023, it's literally the exact same thing, the exact same depth chart. No Shaquille Griffin. Wow. Okay. You're missing a corner. I think they added a linebacker in the draft at some point. Literally, exact same depth chart from last year. You have the same players, you have the same philosophy. And what were you bad at doing last year that you couldn't figure out last year? Couldn't figure out how to stop the pass against the running back. They were one of the worst teams in the league. I believe it was second to worst in the entire league in terms of rush receiving yards allowed to the running back position. And what does Deion Jackson do? He catches the ball out the backfield. He is going to be that Naeem Hines replacement type for this backfield. And now he's getting that main work. And we've seen him in the starting position before last year. We've seen him get the start and be very, very productive for fantasy. So, in terms of flex appeal and what I think that, is a good flex decision, and maybe that's what the question is. Maybe it is this a flex spot or is this one of your starting your RB2, RB1? Like how desperate are you for RB here? But I really do feel good about Deion Jackson because I think that he's going to get majority of the workload with the only other back that they're probably going to end up playing being Evan Hall, who's still a rookie.
Right. I mean, Terrell, I gotta agree with you. Who was it? It was Brian. Look, Javante, he's gonna be on a pitch count. I mean, he's coming off a torn ACL, right? Brees Hall, same thing. He's gonna be on a pitch count. He's coming off a torn ACL. Dalvin Cook has been deemed healthy and ready to go. Brees Hall is going to play, but as far as a four, even enough of an allotment of the snaps to be fantasy worthy, at least in starting lineups, I'm staying far and away from both those guys. To me, the answer is easy. It's simple. And Terrell, you already said everything that needed to be said. Deion Jackson, my only concern is that with an Anthony Richardson, how often is he going to target the running back? I mean, we've seen a lot of these times with mobile quarterbacks, especially with quarterbacks that have the potential to rush for over 1,000 yards, they just don't really tend to target running backs that much. And I think with the Deion Jackson, he's going to have to have at least 5, 6, maybe 7 catches, I think, to really be capable of being a starter in lineups. And so if Anthony Richardson can kind of get away from that, I don't want to say it's a pattern, but I guess it kind of is, for lack of a better term, then yeah, he's most definitely very, very valuable. But if you're starting any of these guys in your running back 2 spot, I'd be a little worried. So I'm hoping to, like you mentioned, this is, for the flex and not for like an RB2 spot or anything like that.
Yeah. All right. Let's get through a couple more questions, and we got sweet. I'm not okay. Sweet Teabag has as in his super flex, he has Mahomes and Golf. He traded away Trevor Lawrence, Josh Jacobs, DK Metcalf for BJ Robinson and Tyreek Hill. Thoughts? I mean,
Oh.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty solid. Like you basically got rid of Lawrence, who you don't need. You have Mahomes in your super flex, and you have Golf. That's pretty solid. You can get a third quarterback, and you trade away Lawrence for Josh. So basically, you upgraded Josh Jacobs and DK Metcalf for a Bijan Robinson and a Tyreek Hill, who I think is a pretty solid trade. I think that's fair.
Man, I think, yeah, that's a great trade. I mean, Josh Jacobs, Bijan Robinson, like you talked about, I'd rather have a Bijan, Tyreek Hill over DK Metcalf. I'd rather have a Tyreek Hill. Although the Seahawk in me wants to go with DK, but
Yeah.
at least logically speaking and objectively speaking, I gotta go with Tyreek Hill. And then you're kind of just giving up that third quarterback, like you said. You're able to attain the third quarterback, especially in super flex leagues. I think it's worth it, especially if you're upgrading at your RB1 and wide receiver 1 spots. I love that trade, sweet T. I'm not gonna finish the rest of it, but
All
oh,
right. 32-bit is asking, he has Kelsey. If he sits Hayden Hurst, Musgrave, or Cade Otton, or somebody else in PPR. Well, if those are your only options, there's probably not much out there for you to get in tight end. I'm gonna throw it over to you, Steezy, first. Between them three, which of them three do you like?
Ooh, first of all, I just want to say shout out 32-bit, man. I've done a lot of work with them. I still continue to do work with them. So shout out to 32-bit. Man, like you said, the pickings are slim here. I'd hate to be in this situation. I'm assuming it's a deep league. I'd have to hope that it's a deep league, but Hayden Hurst, Musgrave, Caden Auden, or someone else. Honestly, I do think that Hayden Hurst has a little bit of potential. Outside of an Adam Thielen, I don't think anybody's really locked in as a go-to target of a Bryce Young. DJ Chark isn't 100%. Even Marshall's still been inconsistent. I still need to see it from him. And so Hayden Hurst, being the veteran, being that they're playing a divisional opponent, I heard some nice things, from the two of them, Bryce Young and Hayden Hurst. And so I'll take that dart, especially if Travis Kelce's sitting. But if no grades out there, I'd look into adding them. I definitely look into that for sure.
All right. I think I'm going with Musgrave. I think Musgrave is my pick here. And I know rookie tight end. I'm not really looking into rookie tight ends too often. They normally don't produce, but it's just the unknown factor of Jordan Love. And he's gonna, young quarterbacks love their tight ends. They love the check down options, and Musgrave is really, really good. And so I think that this is a little bit of a match made in heaven, especially if Musgrave starts to get more and more reps. So I think that if I have to pick, especially with Kelsey being out, I'm going to try Musgrave, and hopefully he falls into the end zone with Jordan Love or something like that.
So you shooting for the upside?
Yeah, I'm shooting more of the upside of Musgrave then, because I feel like the other Otten and Hurst, I think that's a little bit more low, like decent floor, but I think that I can have a pretty good upside in Musgrave having double-digit fantasy points because he fell into the end zone.
Real quick, Terrell. So actually, no, never mind. Let me not ask that question. Let's move on.
All right, let's get into some actual DFS. 32-bit also asked how we feel about Evan Hull. I kind of knocked that out a little bit in my Deion Jackson flex talk, and talking about Deion Jackson, especially as a cheap option in DFS. We're gonna start the DFS conversation here with Deion Jackson is one of my favorite running backs in DFS this week, just because of how cheap he is, and I think that he is a player that can win you $1 million. Like, everybody's wondering, who is that player that's going to help you win $1 million if you're going down for a milli maker, or if you're trying to, win the top league or anything like that. You need players that people are not playing, going a little bit under the radar, cheaper options. And he's an extremely cheap option for a team that's still looking to run the ball. They're not going to change anything different like that. You have Anthony Richardson, who's going to draw that attention. Like, he's probably going to start this game going crazy on the ground and draw a bunch of attention and open things up for a Deion Jackson when he starts to run the ball, or even the checkdowns, like the checkdowns that he may get. Like, it's going to be a over boatload of receiving. If you told me at the end of the day, a Deion Jackson had 7 catches at the end of the day for some 60, 70 yards, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised. So I think Deion Jackson is a really cool option. And even though Evan Hull probably going to have some type of value because he is the second running back in that offense, I think that they're going to go all Deion Jackson to start the season.
I'm not mad at that answer. I think Evan Hull has a little bit of potential there, but until you start to put it together on the field, Deion Jackson, he's more established. He knows the offense a lot more, and so Yeah, I'd have to lean towards Deion
And
Jackson as well.
pass protection, like pass
Pass
protection.
protection.
He's caught on to that more. So that's my flex for this week. That I'm probably going to be flexing in a bunch of my lineups is Deion Jackson. I think he's going to have a really good opportunity in DFS this week. Let's go over and let's talk about your boys up in the Northwest here, the Seattle Seahawks, because week one. I like to enter the Millie Maker, and I like to enter the Millie Maker and put in lineups for every quarterback that I can. Every starting quarterback I like to put in a lineup for. They're cheap, why not? So Geno Smith is a person that I was targeting since the offseason that even if I was not putting in a lineup for everybody, I want more shares of Geno Smith against the Rams this week. What is your outlook as Geno Smith for a quarterback going against this Rams defense that sounds like it's going to be a lot worse than we're typically accustomed to seeing them doing?
Man, I think when it comes to Geno and the Seahawks offense, at least this week in particular, I'm not nearly as high as you are, Terrell. And there's nothing against Geno, and it's not to say that the Rams have a tough defense. What it is that every time these two teams play, it's always a slugfest. Points are at a premium, and so because these guys are such rivals, games are always going to come down to the wire. Games are always going to be dogfights, and with that comes a lack of points. And so he's going to have to put up for it or make up for it, excuse me, either with his rushing production, which he did a solid job and under the radar job last year, or just a bunch of passing yards. And I'm just not sure if that's going to be the case. Jackson Smith and Jigba is most likely not going to play. Now, I do believe in the Jake Bobo and his ability to step it up, but typically these games aren't very, very high scoring. And so I'm not expecting a whole lot statistically from Geno Smith. Now, as far as the dubs, Seattle's more than capable, and Geno's obviously going to be, the one steering the ship behind that. But as far as statistically and what he's going to put up, fantasy wise and as far as his fantasy line, I'm not super, super high on his prospects this week just because of the opponent.
Okay. So we have the optimizer here. Make sure you tap into fantasysportslogic.com, take the screenshot or grab the QR code, forgot what thing was even called, QR code, whatever it is, screenshot it, use your phone, all that stuff, and go get the optimizer, because if you look at the optimizer, it has Geno Smith as the 8th best quarterback in terms of fantasy. This is using DK scoring, so it may be different with another level of scoring. They have Geno Smith as the 8th best quarterback this week, and I'm kind of buying into it. Hopefully, I get that divisional angle. Divisional dogs are really, really good in week one. That can help a season go under, but if I'm looking at it, I think that Matthew Stafford probably can get a little bit more offense out of this group than we're giving them credit for. And I think that if he does, it's going to force Geno Smith to be a passer, and it's going to force them to be really, really good down in scoring the basketball, him being able to push the ball downfield. We've seen that they pretty much gutted their secondary, so it's a brand new secondary rolling out for the Los Angeles Rams here. But I think Geno Smith can do all right. So I like Geno Smith. The optimizer likes Geno Smith. He's one of their top quarterbacks this week. I want to pose the question for you. If not Geno Smith, and we know it can't be Patrick Mahomes or Jared Goff because they're on Thursday, what's another quarterback that you're looking for in DFS this week that you think is a good start?
Man, I'm going to just go ahead and say it's off the top. I'm going to say Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, I'm looking at that matchup versus the Chargers. That's going to be a shootout. I would not be surprised if that was the highest scoring game of the weekend, excluding Thursday night's matchup. And so, you look at those two high-octane offenses led by Justin Herbert, led by Tua Tagovailoa. It's gonna be points galore. It's gonna be fireworks. There's gonna be a lot of points, a lot of playmakers, a lot of stars, a lot of action. Give me Tua Tagovailoa, Terrell.
Yeah, no, I think Tua, that's another lineup that I was looking at too. And I was trying to decide, do I back Tua or do I just back the wide receivers to have a good day? But they kind of go hand in hand here. I think Tua is a really good start. And I still have questions about this defense of the Chargers. It looks like Bosa already might be missing a game before we even start the season. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw that other day that Bosa might not even be playing in this game. I don't know. Let me go back and make sure I was talking about the right Bosa, because Lord knows the Bosa brothers are just family genes just going crazy in that family. And oh man, but well, maybe that's
I think that's
Yeah,
Nick
so he's
because I
a
did see
no,
a
that's Nick.
report.
Oh yeah, that's Nick Bosa. Okay, so maybe it was Nick
Okay.
Bosa that I was looking into him having a holdout, but that even goes better for another quarterback that I want to throw in a value perspective. So I like your Tua pick. Tua, one of the top quarterbacks. He's the top. They have him as a top 10 quarterback here, and what he's going to be able to do this week. But going into the value and looking for values because Geno Smith 6,100 on DraftKings, one of the top quarterbacks. Tua is more than him, 67. So again, another top quarterback, which is crazy because the optimizer actually has Geno having a better day than Tua. And
Mm,
let's look into that a little bit further. But I wanted to scroll down the list because I wanted to find the cheap options. I wanted to give the people options because if you want to take down the Millie Maker, if you want to win $1 million, you got to get different, but you got to be good
right.
and different. And I'm glad we cleared up which Bosa that was because now I can go all in on the opposite quarterback. Kenny
Mm,
Pickett could potentially have a really, really good day. And the 49ers could realize how much DeMarco Ryans really, really meant to their defense very early on into the season. I think that with a revitalized offensive line as they got Broderick Jones, they started, tinkering with the offensive line. And then you go and you have Kenny Pickett, who's a mobile quarterback, who's gotten another year in the offense, able to see things better. Like, especially when you look at quarterbacks, when they talk about from year one to year two, things look so much easier. Like, you look up and the player's exactly where he needs to be. You're reading the defense exactly how it's supposed to be. And now he has an offseason being the guy. Last offseason, it was Mitchell Trubisky's show. Mitchell Trubisky was getting first team reps. Mitchell Trubisky was going to be the starter. Mitchell Trubisky was kicking the season off. Now it's all Kenny Pickett. We don't have to worry about anything else from any other quarterback. It's his show. He's getting all the first team reps. He's getting all the work. And so I think that's going to bode well for them with a San Francisco team that's traveling east for an early 1 o'clock game. You potentially could have no Bosa in here as he's holding out for contract disputes. I think this is a good opportunity to play a Kenny Pickett who has good receiving options. I know everybody talks about George Pickens, and of course you should because he's an absolute dog. But Deontay Johnson is still there. Still have Fryermuth. Still have Najee Harris. You brought in Darnell Washington in the draft. He's going to be a red zone target for Pickett. I think Kenny Pickett could have a very good day, and he's an extremely cheap option in fantasy.
Terrell, one more, if you don't mind. I wanted to add a player at quarterback that I think is going to be an even cheaper option than the Kenny Pickett. And not to knock your pick, but how about the second cheapest quarterback right now, and it's Sam Howell? I mean, he's going up against a
Yeah,
very good
yeah.
Washington defense,
That's what I'm
right?
talking about. Yes, that's
Right.
the
And you
energy I'm talking about.
Right. You talking about wanting to make $1 million. You talk about wanting to be different. You talk about wanting to go a different route. Why not go with a Sam Howell? I'm a big believer in a Sam Howell. Now, I understand Terry McLaurin, more likely than not, he's not going to play. He's not going to be available week one. But heck, you might not even need him. Jahan Dotson, I think, is a legitimate and a possible potential wide receiver one. I think for years to come. He showed a lot of potential last year. And then you look at Curtis Samuel, he's done some things in the league. And so obviously he's going to be a threat. Sam Howell's always going to be a threat with his legs. He's proven it in college when he had the talent around him. But when you look at the Arizona Cardinals defense, this is arguably the worst team in football. Heck, let me take that word away. This is the worst team in football. And they traded away Isaiah Simmons for what? The measly cost of a 7th-round pick? Like, this team is obviously tanking. And they're
Shout out
not
to
hiding
Shane.
it anymore. And so, you know what I mean, Terrell?
Allegedly tanking.
Allegedly tanking,
Allegedly.
right? Allegedly tanking. Like, this team is, they've been blowing it up for a while now, especially when they traded down, tried to acquire more picks next year. But yeah, Sam Howell for me. I mean, man, if I'm throwing darts, Sam Howell's definitely one of the darts that I'm throwing because not only is he the second cheapest quarterback, he has one of the easiest matchups.
Yeah. And so let's go ahead and take this into the next part of the conversation with DFS. And I get this question a lot. And it's how do you feel about stacking? And I think stacking, that's pretty much how a lot of DFS players have won, the Millie Maker. I remember last year, and you'll remember this game, the Seahawks Lions game, that ultra high powered, whole bunch of points on both sides. I will never forget the winning lineup from that week had like 5 players from that game alone. Like from that
Ooh.
point. Now, am I recommending you do that? Absolutely not. But you see how stacking can be beneficial because they got a very, very high scoring game. It was like 5 players from one team on that game, and so everybody had great fantasy production. They ended up winning home the Millie Maker. But I am pro stack, and I typically like to stack my quarterback with receiving options, maybe with the tight end option or a running back option, and just maximize the points that that quarterback is going to get in the game with the options that they have. And let's talk about Sam Howell and some of his options because we have a Terry McLaurin who is nursing an injury a little bit, but he looks like he's going to be able to go for Sunday. You also have a Jahan Dotson as well, so you're going to be looking at him potentially for extra work. You Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson. I mean, the same thing for Kenny Pickett. When I talk about George Pickens, you have a Deontay Johnson, you have a uh Pat Fryermuth, so Najee Harris. So when you look at these options that we've given at quarterback thus far, what are the pass catching options or the stack options that you see that I would probably look to try to play and get some value on in there?
Besides, are we just talking about Sam Howell, or are you asking for
Yeah, I
alternatives?
mean, you could. It could be Sam. It could be for Sam Howell. It could be for Kenny Pickett. Like it could even be for Geno Smith or Tua. Like, of course, we know kind of Tua. You want to play Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but what are
Right.
these options that you're looking for with your starting quarterback? If you say you were starting Sam Howell this week, or if you say you were starting whoever this week, what is the stack options that you're looking for, or what games are you even targeting for a really good stack? Because for me, the first and foremost game that I feel like I'm targeting for a really good stack is the Saints and Titans game. I think that's going to be an ultra high scoring game because the two teams do really well what the other team can't defend. Titans can't defend the pass, save their life, and Derek Carr is a pretty good passer. And guess what? He has Chris Olave and Michael Thomas on the other side of him, ready to catch passes. And then Michael Thomas is healthy right now, so I'm expecting to see some production. We'll see what happens if he gets injured, but he's healthy right now. As long as he's healthy, I expect to see production. On the other side of the ball, you have Derrick Henry going up against a run defense in the Saints that has lost David Onyemata. They have lost Marcus Davenport. They have lost so much on the defensive end. They lost both of their co-defensive coordinators from last year. It's so much retooling on that defense, and they already were not good against the run. I don't expect that to get any better this season. So I think Derrick Henry can have a good day running the ball over there. So that could be a good option if you want to do a type of game stack in that one with maybe Derek Carr, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, and then Derrick Henry as your get back. And then you have all this cap space where you can go try to get some a Deion Jackson or somebody like that and set a lineup like that together. So where are you trying to look for some game stacks or some quarterback stacks this weekend where you see a whole bunch of points being scored?
Man, honestly, contrary to what you just said, because I don't think there's gonna be a whole lot of points scored, at least on both teams. But I'm looking at, and these are obviously more expensive options, but I'm in love with the Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack this week.
Yeah,
When you look at, you
yeah.
feel me, Terrell? When I look at, that Baltimore Ravens passing attack, obviously, like we've talked about in the past, Todd Monken, they're gonna pass a lot more. But when I look at that secondary of the Houston Texans, they're actually pretty good. And so Derek Stingley, I don't know if he's going to be shadowing an OBJ or a Zay Flowers. While the Ravens have options, a plethora of options at wide receiver, I'm staying away from that. I might as well just go to Lamar Jackson's go-to target in a Mark Andrews. Last year when Lamar Jackson was on the field, he was at his absolute best. Once Lamar Jackson went down with an injury, he was at his absolute worst. And so hopefully he does play. I know there has been some concern about his
Mm-hmm.
availability, but it does look like he is going to play. And so while I don't think it's going to be very high scoring between Houston and Baltimore, I do think that Lamar, I mean, he's going to target Mark Andrews early and often. Like I said, that's his favorite target. His receivers are going to be, shadowed by some tough matchups at cornerback led by Derek Stingley. I like Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson. Give me both of them this week.
Oh man, I mean the Ravens are about to walk the dog on the Texans, man. Like
That's what
this
I'm
is
saying.
man, this is John Harbaugh in the beginning of the season. I don't think there's the only better bet than John Harbaugh in week one is John Harbaugh in the preseason. Like that is literally the only better bet out there. They go, and I think there's some 1-6 of their last seven for week one games by an average win margin of like 24 to 28 points or something like that. And
Damn.
then the only game they lost was the first game ever in Vegas. So it's just like, I mean, I can't blame you. You lost in Vegas. Like I would lose the game in Vegas too. So
Hey, you gotta let them win it.
yeah, like I would have lost the game in Vegas, so I can't even get mad at you. Like they're absolutely dominant. Ravens -9.5 is one of my favorite bets
Mhm.
in Week 1. I think they're going to dominate the Texans, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of fantasy points for Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, the Fantasy Sports Logic Optimizer, make sure you get it with that QR code down below, is actually one of the better options for quarterback. He's the best option. They have the optimizer has him as their top quarterback this week with the expected fantasy points value of 22.4 here for Lamar Jackson. And I 100% agree. I agree with you. I think that he may not be the most contrarian option, but this is where you don't have to go contrarian at every spot. It's actually not advised to be contrarian everywhere. You got to go a little bit of chalk some of these places and get contrarian where it matters in that flex spot somewhere else. Maybe you get a second wide receiver that nobody's looking at. Maybe you get a tight end that nobody's looking at and he goes crazy. Like you gotta get these other options. And so if you go big on Lamar Jackson, make sure you acute for that salary with some better options. And we could talk about that with the tight end market because I know the tight end market is Kelsey. Well, not this week, but you have the top options, and you actually have a lot of big tight ends that are not going to be in this Sunday lineup. You're not going to have Travis Kelsey. You're not going to have a Darren Waller in the lineup. And so, next is like George Kittle, Mark Andrews, as you said. So if you're not going with an Andrews stack, if you don't trust Brock Purdy like I don't for a Kittle stack, where are you looking at tight end for week 1? Who's somebody that you think can have a really good day?
Man, that's a great question. Like I talked about earlier, I did mention his name at the top of the show. I'm gonna go with David Njoku of the
Yeah.
Cleveland Browns. I just think with the way that the Browns have been using him, throughout the preseason, we've seen the connection between him and Deshaun Watson all throughout training camp. Even towards the end of last year when Deshaun Watson wasn't himself, I like to think that he kind of upped the value of a David Njoku. I mean, there's a
Mm-hmm.
stat that went around that Deshaun Watson during his time in Houston didn't really target tight ends, and I'm not exactly sure what that stat is, but to kind of, I guess, refute that stat, he's never had a guy, an athletic specimen like a David Njoku at
Mm-hmm.
tight end. Yes, he has pass catching options, weapons at wide receiver for days, but when I look at the Cincinnati Bengals, the team that they're facing, they lost both of their safeties in a Jesse Bates and what's his name, and Avon Bell. And so I do think that the back of the secondary is going to be vulnerable. David Njoku, he's a problem, especially up the seam. And again, he's just an athletic specimen. He's going to be a guy that
Mm-hmm.
they target and that they look to in the end zone. And look, Cincinnati Cleveland could be a low key high scoring game. Anytime there's
Yeah.
a game that I believe that's going to be high scoring, I'm going to want players, from both those teams. So if I can get my hands on a David Njoku, I'm going to do it every single time.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. One team or one game that I really think that everybody doesn't see as high scoring, but I think can be the Buccaneers versus the Minnesota Vikings. And I know we go and you think, oh, it's Baker Mayfield, but Baker's petty. Baker hears everything that you guys are saying. He's one of those little petty guys that he just comes out and has an all-world quarterback day for once and then goes back to being a bad quarterback. And so when you talk about Mike Evans still in the lineup, talk about Chris Godwin still in the lineup, both of those guys on expiring deals and haven't been re-signed by the team. And so I sit here to bring my Brian Windhorse, and I'm like, why would they not resign either of their top wide receivers? Why would they do that? Because they don't plan on bringing them back. Okay, why are you not planning on? If you're not planning on bringing them back, what are you doing with them? If you're trying to move them, you gotta highlight them. You have to highlight them. I think Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are being undervalued because of Baker Mayfield, but you still have a Minnesota defense that was really bad last year. They were forced into a lot of one score games and they had to kind of try to battle and make sure they won those. You think that that's going to regress a little bit and this team is not going to win that many one score games, and everybody just assumes that Minnesota's going to come in here and walk the dog with Tampa Bay. Not so fast. I think that the options when you talk about Rashad White, talk about a Mike Evans and a Chris Godwin, if Baker can just get them the ball, they're going to be perfectly fine, and this offense is going to move. So I think that potential game stack here for the Buccaneers and Minnesota Vikings. What do you think about that game?
Man, Terrell, first of all, I just want to say I second that opinion. And when I look at a Baker Mayfield, this is something that not a lot of people know about. But Dave Canales, who was the passing game, or not, excuse me, he was the quarterbacks coach in Seattle
Mm-hmm.
last year during Geno Smith's resurgent season. And I'm not saying that Baker Mayfield is all of a sudden going to pull a Geno Smith, but he does have a guy that was kind of working behind the scenes with the Geno Smith. So he does know a thing or two about a quarterback renaissance / resurgence. And like you talked about, he
Mm-hmm.
has a plethora of weapons. He has a head coach that's, while he's defensive minded, he's a capable and a competent head coach. He does have a defense that's still absolutely loaded with talent. But with the Baker Mayfield, outside of that offensive line, which I think is going to be a little iffy, I mean, he's set up to succeed. You have a running back that loves to catch passes out of the backfield. You have a wide receiver in
Mm-hmm.
the Mike Evans who, even though he might not sign a contract extension with his football team, he's going on what, 7, 8 years running of 1,000 yards. I mean, Chris Godwin was healthy. He has the options at wide receiver. This could also have the potential of being another high-scoring game. Minnesota, not known for their defense, lost a lot of guys over the offseason. And so with the Tampa Bay and the Minnesota, I mean, again, I think there's going to be a lot of points scored there. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but hey, we're only highlighting matchups that are high scoring, at least in my eyes. And so Baker Mayfield, I'm not in love with it, but I do think that he's a guy that's flying under the radar, and not a lot of people are really paying attention to him. And I guess that's deserved, but yo, Dave Canales, we got to watch out.
Yeah, man. I think that's a good game stack. I think if I have a Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and maybe a TJ Hawkinson with a bring back of a Mike Evans or a Chris Godwin, that feels very good. And I covered that game for a lot of scoring. So I am 100% probably getting down in DFS. And the optimizer agrees with me because it does have some of those players listed. Make sure you get that Fantasy Sports Logic optimizer with the QR code below. Before we wrap, I just want to get your take. Yeah. It's weird. You got to try to remember which direction it's at. It's down here. It's down there. So,
Come
uh,
on.
I want to get your take on just who else, like anybody else. It can be any position or anywhere. Who else are you looking to target this week in DFS week 1?
Man, let me run through some of my actual lineups real quick. A guy, or I guess a couple of guys that I like. Man, Terrell, you talked about how at least the Titans, because that's the team that the Saints are going up against, can't defend a pass to save their life. Correct? That's what you said.
Yeah.
So if this guy's healthy, and reports, all throughout training camp, all throughout the preseason indicate that he is healthy, some of the reports are even saying that he's back to quote unquote playing like his old self. What
Yeah.
about a Michael Thomas?
Yeah,
What about a
I think
Michael
he's
Thomas?
very underrated. I think he's very underrated this week, and I think it's because everybody thinks about the injury concerns, but they forget that when he was on the field, he was literally dominant. Like he was good when he was on the field. Maybe he was on the field for 3 games, but I don't need him on the field for 3 games. This is daily fantasy.
Mhm.
Daily. I just need him on the field this one day. If he's on the field and he's good, I'm playing him.
Hey, I'm on the Contrarian website right now, 5,100, and that's not, I guess, a complete bargain, but it's also not over the top as far as price. And so I'm looking at a guy that can have, started like level production,
Yeah.
and Michael Thomas.
He's priced as a wide receiver too, and he could potentially be a wide receiver 1 this week. That is
That's
exactly
what I'm
what you're
saying.
looking for.
Right.
Exactly what you're looking for. Let's see. Who do I like here that I haven't mentioned? I feel like I've thrown out my entire lineup basically. What's your thoughts here on tight ends versus the Seahawks defense? Because with Cooper Cup having this injury, and this is probably the last player that I'll give out, and with Cooper Cup having this injury, Matthew Stafford's looking at throwing the ball to Van Jefferson, like
Puka Nacua.
Puka, Puka Nakua, like, but everybody seems to forget that Tyler Higbee is still there. Tyler Higbee did used to be a favorite target of Jared Goff, a very good target to Matthew Stafford, and from my knowledge, the Seahawks have had some issues in the past guarding the tight end position, especially no Jamal Adams in this game. So, is this somewhere where I can get an extremely cheap tight end, like he's one of the bottom of the barrel tight ends, and get a touchdown or a really good game from him?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, you talked about how Seattle's defense, yeah, it's been a little leaky against the pass, especially against tight ends. But I think even though Jamal Adams isn't going to be there, let's not forget Bobby Wagner is back. But I think just by sheer volume, he's going to be the guy. I mean, honestly, I take
Yeah.
him over Van Jefferson when I'm just looking at the pecking order. Maybe not completely from a fantasy perspective, but when I just look at the pecking order, Tyler Higbee is going to be the number one pass catcher option with the Cooper Cup out. Puka Nakua, I don't trust him just yet. Van Jefferson, I think he's more hit or miss. He's going to be more volatile. But as far as a guy that's going to compile a bunch of receptions, a guy that I can count on to get a touchdown, yeah, Tyler
Yeah.
Higbee. Give me Tyler Higbee. And it's for the low. Man, I can't think of a better combination.
Tyler, that's gonna be one of my props on my betting show this week. I think I'm gonna be all in on the Tyler. It just why would I throw the ball to everybody else that's just unproven? And I know Tyler Higbee can do it, and I know he has the matchups to do it. I don't even. I wish they had props out for him. Oh well, let's see. Tyler Higbee, anytime touchdown score, plus 175. See, they already caught up a little bit, but that's telling me they expect him to have a better day. Plus 175 for a tight end. They expect him to have a better day. I like that in DFS. So I'm 100% getting down on Tyler Higbee. He's in my lineup this week. Cheap tight end option. Steezy, it was great, man. We rolled through another one. Can't wait to be back here again. And shout out to Simon, man. Shout out to Simon, a little bit under the weather. Hope he gets better. We'll have him back on here next week. Steezy, anything else for the people before we get up out of here?
Man, I just want to say Twitter, YouTube, if you're not already subscribed, but you tuned in, you watching Sportstopia HQ. This is, man, you've been tuned into the NFL edition, but they also have a great show. I know, Terrell, you do work on the MLB show from time to time. And so for you guys never to miss an episode, to never miss any updates, anything like that, Sportstopia HQ on Twitter and YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok soon to come.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. And I mean, he's at Steezy A Smith. I'm at really real __ on Twitter. Again, like he said, Sportstopia HQ. Follow us wherever Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you do that. And I mean, at this point, I really have nothing else to say, nothing else to do. I don't have a cool catchphrase to end podcast. I'm just gonna end it like this. We are out of here.
Peace.